From the time a girl gains awareness of her surroundings, she's asked to adjust. Adjust as a daughter, adjust as a daughter-in-law, adjust as a wife, adjust her voice, adjust her clothes, adjust how she sits, adjust her work timings, adjust her dreams. The shift from we women having to adjust to the society adjusting for us so we can fully bloom happens through change makers with strong voices. Namaste. Welcome to the Naari Shakti show. I'm your host Aparna, and every week we bring to you these change makers with their strong voices. Women who not just inspire but empower countless others. We invite not just women to join the show, but all you wonderful men as well, because equality is not a race, it's a journey of men and women side by side. Today, I have the absolute privilege and delight of having with us the multifaceted Shreya Krishnan. From anchor to author to actor to activist, Shreya is a true polymath leader. That's not all. She's also a dancer, model, poet, MC, speaker, earth warrior, corp diva, and an NLP Gestalt master therapist. The list goes on. She's the winner of the Miss Universal Empowerment 2024, and she was crowned the Mrs. India World 2017, and also the subtitle of Beauty with a Purpose. She's the co-author of the book Words Matter, that changes the narrative around women. She's currently the MD at the AnitaBOrg, India, whether through urban sanitization projects or leading the Grasshopper celebration. Shreya is redefining Naari Shakti into tangible economic power. Welcome to the show, Shreya.
Thank you so much, Aparna. What a joy it is to be a part of Naari Shakti.
Likewise. So, Shreya, you are the managing director at AnitaBOrg India, and you're also leading countless social foundations. You're really operating at a very massive scale. So, what has been your overarching mission as you do this?
I think very early on when I was growing up, I grew up in a house where my grandmom had 4 daughters and all of them had 4 more daughters. So my brother was the only boy in 2 generations. So I grew up in a family environment where gender didn't matter at all. It was about who was capable of doing what. So when I got out of my house and when I got out into the world, I suddenly realized that being a woman had somewhat a role to play in my journey. And I think the joy and freedom of an upbringing that's so inclusive gives you so much privilege, right? And I think that's where it sort of started saying, why can't we change the world to be more like the way I grew up? The more open it is, the more thinking you're able to do, the more it's about you as a person and not as your gender. What is your capacity? What are your choices? What are your capabilities? So the whole going inward thing, and I think that stuck with me. And also this huge interest in being this environmental activist. I actually started with environmental sciences and journalism. I was part of Greenpeace. I was part of UNEP. I had all of these dreams of becoming this, the next Medha Patkar, if at all. And that's how the saris also happened. So, when I was growing up, it was very much about the planet. And then I started going deeper into human and humanity aspects of sustainability and the social segment of it. And that sort of built further into my body of work with women, because everywhere you see, whether it's wars, whether it's climate displacement, it's women and children that are most deeply impacted. And somewhere I think my privilege kept reminding me that I had to pay it back, that I had to pay it forward. And I think that's just what it's been. My life's been a testament of the privilege that I've had and my small attempt to make a difference in the world that I belong to.
Lovely, lovely. So, where you started out to be, you said you're a family of sisters and then you have all had daughters. What about women who don't have that to begin with? You're impacting the lives of so many women, you're empowering them. In your perspective, what is success? How many women do you actually plan to impact by 2030? And your definition of success?
I think success is financial independence for me. Because in all of the spaces we work, economic access becomes the primary definition for women's liberty, women's freedom, women's ability to function. So there's this beautiful line which somebody had said, which means that in India there's a sort of barrier, monetary barrier, beyond which patriarchy crumbles for a woman. Right? So once you reach a certain economic value, patriarchy doesn't really hold the woman back.
True.
Right? So I think for me, it was sort of trying to understand the nuances of what does this mean. And financial independence means keeping women in jobs, keeping women all the way up to senior leadership in their careers, getting women entrepreneurs, to get funded. Globally, there's only 2% funding that goes to women entrepreneurs, right? And there's a lot of these stigmas and biases that are part of the ecosystem that don't allow this to happen. So my work is in the intersection of that, in the intersections of understanding what are the primary problems women have, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially. How can we sort of address their problems? How can we help them find jobs, find careers, find entrepreneurship? How can we keep them invested, interested, and growing? And I'm part of Wow Kitty Trust, which is a microfinancing platform. I'm one of the founder trustees, where we actually do 0% interest loans for rural women entrepreneurs in India. In the last 10 years, 85 women, we get together, we contribute 1,000 rupees per person per month, and that goes into a fund that goes to giving rural women entrepreneurs these loans. And in the last 10 years, the fund has almost hit 1 crore. We've supported over 5,000 rural Indian entrepreneurs. So it's small sometimes, the impact that you think, but the kind of loans they take, 5,000 rupees, but they're able to, a flower seller is able to grow her business. A girl who wants to learn driving, learns driving, starts driving her own car and is now part of airport taxi. A tailor is now stitching not just the 300, 400 rupee blouses, but is able to sell at 900 because now she has an embroidery machine that she can leverage. There's small stories of impact, but they're so deeply powerful. And I think for me, it's understanding how small bits of impact can really lead to a large mammoth change overall.
True. And each one of those cases that you mentioned are life-changing, right? You enable them for a lifetime.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned about mental, physical, and financial. You just mentioned the financial aspect. We all know what the physical differences are. Can you talk a little bit about the mental aspect? How are women mentally different and how do we overcome that?
I think we're conditioned as women to have a lot more self-doubt. We're also exposed to a lot more mental load. If you speak to any woman leader, and there is an analysis or a data that's done about the number of hours that women work versus the number of hours that men work, the number of hours women sleep versus the number of hours men sleep, the number of hours women invest in personal grooming versus the number of hours men invest in personal grooming. Everywhere, guilt-free, right? Everywhere there's a huge gap. And whether it's free time, whether it's watching something, whether it's all of that, men always tend to have more of that. Because traditionally our societies have been designed for women to take on this load.
Correct.
And the mental load doesn't decrease at any point. It only keeps increasing, right? One is the mental load of safety. You're always worried about a woman's safety. A woman spends about 6 years of her life worrying about her safety, they say. If you were to total the number of hours you think of carrying pepper spray, sending your Uber to somebody to say that I'm on my way, all of that. And there's a joke that says the biggest fear men have is that women will laugh at them. The biggest fear women have is that men will kill them. And the closest kind of intimate violence is highest within families, right? Abuse is closest within the home. And there's a statistic to say that Indian women are most unsafe in their homes. So the mental load of safety is one. Then let's come to the mental load of what's expected out of your gender, which is, you're expected to be behaving a certain way, sit like a girl, talk like a girl, act like a girl. We've all heard that, right? Dress like a decent girl. All these labels that we acquire. There's a huge mental load of just living with those labels. And then as you go on to become mothers, then there's that layer, additional responsibility, daughters-in-law, wives, so many of these labels
which
get added
our male counterparts do not have to face.
Exactly, right? And then add to the complexity of this, managing a home, running a house, domestic chores, running a washing machine, all the way to planning meals. Even if you have help, the house help is always managed by the woman for some reason.
True.
Right? And this is true for almost all of the households we know.
True.
So the mental load of even the domestic angle of it is very high. Then the third is of the mental load of our bodies changing, right? When you're in your reproductive years, menopause, all of these things come with mental fog, mental health problems. There's postpartum depression, which is barely talked about.
True.
So there's also that aspect of mental health. And all through this, women are expected to be functioning, working, smiling, happy. I mean, even at festivals in India, you'll see that it's the women who are doing the mammoth amount of load or work that happens, right? The whole thing around koletta yaar potta, samayala yaar panna, it's all the mental load of invisible load that women are constantly carrying. And that leads to emotional blocks, that leads to not being in your energy, that leads to being constantly pulled outside of your comfort zone. There are so many nuances to this. So it impacts deeply the way women show up at work, the way women show up for themselves, with their families. A lot of them are in dead-end relationships, but they don't have the financial ability to walk out. So they continue to stay on in toxic, abusive marriages or relationships. Close partner violence is a big deal. So all of this data and these numbers speaking to the fact that women are tired of trying to live up to these societal expectations that have been pushed down their throats forever. And now when they are coming out of it, the whole destabilization of the structures that society had put is also putting a lot of strain on them, because now the destabilized structures, because, oh, that woman's too modern, or she's got too much education, or her career's growing too fast,
or she's being too aggressive.
Exactly, right? And there's this beautiful line which says, what's the difference between being bossy and being a leader? And they say the answer is gender. Because if it's a woman, she's bossy. It's a man, he's just being a leader. You know, and I'm sure as an entrepreneur, Parna, you'd have faced so much of this, right? And your partner is a man. And I'm sure you've been in rooms where you probably know the business and understand it so much better, but the questions are directed to him. You probably respond with the answer, but they still look at him, right? And it happens everywhere.
People just expect that there is a male on the other side. They say, dear sir, hello sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
I like that you mentioned invisible load, because there's so much that we just take it on our stride, not really thinking of how much this is actually impacting us.
Yeah.
All right. So Shreya, you are a major advocate of equity by design. What is it in the way that we design our workspaces and social systems that still fail women?
I think societally is the problem, right? Because workplaces are trying policy, they're trying now to change. But why does that not change? Because our fundamental societal structures stay the same. In the home environment, a daughter, a mother, a wife is seen a certain way. And they're the same people who are also stepping out. And let's be honest and real, right? It's not just men, it's women also.
Very true.
Who navigate this world because they're accessing what they feel is power they can get through being the mother, the wife, the daughter, in relation to the man in their lives. And a lot of times the patriarchy is deeply internalized by them as well. And I keep saying this.
Very true.
It's the mother who will decide, who gets, the chicken gravy and the chicken piece. And it's an old story, but it's still the mother of the house that decides that. It's the mother of the house that will tell the son that I'm waiting for your wife to come in so that I can relax finally and, hand the jobs over to her. It's the mother that will get upset or happy depending on the child that's born, whether it's a boy or a girl. And in 2026 India, there's still stigma around girl children being born. We still have female feticide and infanticide. So there's so much of this that continues to be in the world that we're in. And that goes back into us asking, is it really the workplace? No, it's the society that needs a reset. It's our own
society
minds.
Is men and us women too.
And everybody else, all the other genders that get impacted by this very binary way of looking at the world. So I think the shift comes when you start the work within. Right? When you start changing internally is when you'll start shifting the lens outside externally. So it has to start psychologically. It has to be paralleled with advocacy, with government schemes, with corporate policy. all of this has to work together. But because they're all at different stages of change, it's not all coming together the way we'd like. It's happening in pockets, in micro pockets, but overarching, the struggle continues to be the same, because it's really not change at a scale. It's change in micro communities.
The generation today, the men, they're definitely evolved compared to the previous generation. You see it from our ads, right? Earlier it used to be a lady who's actually making tea. You see that shift happening. What is your perception of the society that we are in today compared to the previous generation?
Yeah, I think while the shift is a great shift, I think what continues to happen is for us to applaud men who do the bare minimum. Right?
Yes, very true.
I keep saying this. Parenting is a life skill. Cooking is a life skill. Cleaning a house is life skill. Paying bills is a life skill. When did some of it become one gender and the other, right? In a world that needs people to be growing, to know, to manage their lives, what life brings to them, we need people who are strongly capable of managing all these aspects. But when we keep splitting it by gender, we're increasing the load consistently on one while not on the other. And the minute the other steps in to do even the bare minimum, we applaud them like, a man who does not sexually abuse somebody, a man who cooks in the house, a man who cleans the house is a normal man. It doesn't make him extraordinary by any standard. The bare minimum that we expect. So that, I think, is some of the things that we really need to examine. And a lot of times we leave a lot of women out of the conversations with the men, and we leave the men out of conversations with women, right? These conversations are happening in echo chambers, and men obviously are feeling very unstable because they're losing their idea or identity of the protector and the provider, while not really gaining a new identity.
True.
Whereas women are becoming extremely capable, competent, whether it's financial independence, etc., at least in urban setups in India, and we're not helping the men transition.
True.
Right? We're equipping women with a lot of the wherewithal, but the men continue to struggle. And also imagine this, if men have this privilege for years, why is it going to be easy for them to suddenly let it go and switch over? It's not. So the transitions need to be holistic. We need to have more dialogue, more conversations, more build, and make it a lot more seamless for everybody to be the best versions of themselves.
True. You're right. We as women are becoming more of everything. And that's one reason why, you said it has to be holistic, with both men and women being equal partners, which is why we also invite men to watch the show. Now, the pay parity debate is such a hot button.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people say this is just a myth. I don't agree. Why is it that you don't agree, Shreya?
It's not a myth at all. It's statistics. I keep joking, right? When I'm saying that only 2% of global investor funding goes to women, when we are such a large part of the population, that must tell us something. The pay parity gaps are 20 to 60% in certain spaces. It's everyday labor that's unmatched, right? And we're talking also about invisible labor. Right? For the visible labor, you're already getting paid lower. The invisible labor that exists is already on your shoulders.
True.
So it's like a triple layered sort of double whammy, triple whammy, whatever you want to call it. And there's enough research to prove when a man has a child, he is perceived to be more accountable and he gains 7 to 9% of his salary. When a woman has a child, she loses 4 to 7% of her salary. But I've not seen a single woman who shows up at work after having a child, her operating, capacity is not lower. And I keep joking, my uterus and my brain are not connected.
True. Very true.
I can't think of a woman who suddenly had a child she's probably going to want to manage her time, but her competence has not dropped.
True.
And then when we create these environments, we're allowing it to perpetuate. So the pay parity thing is not a myth at all. It's a very real thing. And for us to actually acquire parity, they say it's going to take us 131 years more, which is not a joke. And we know this. We know in rooms where people who have the same, capacity, who have the same background, the same colleges that they've studied in, all of the same parameters, but the woman often doesn't even get hired because she's a woman, because there's a perceptional value around, oh, she's going to get married, she's going to have children. And that's such deep-seated unconscious bias. And that unconscious bias is now spilled over into AI, it's spilled over into every other aspect of what we've created. So now we're living in our own echo chamber.
True. So, what is it that we as women can do to change that?
I think one is, I also feel really bad because we've already designed the world this way, and then we put the pressure and the onus of changing it for the women. We designed it wrong, and then we've put them inside this wrong playground. We've forced them to play by our rules, and then we're saying, no, but you have to break certain rules. You have to push certain parameters, but the playground and the premise is still the same. And we're harder on women, right?
True.
Because we're like, she didn't do enough.
True.
But the design itself is flawed. You're playing Squid Games, and then you're expecting people to win left, right, and center, while what depends on it is their life, is the perceived reality, is all of that, right? And I think that is a big gap that needs to be addressed, right? I think, yes, can women equip themselves? I think it's very important to go and work.
Be our own advocates, right?
Absolutely. And do the work. But having said that, I think the work has to be collective healing. Because again, you'll have a bunch of very healed women ready, empowered to hit the world, and the world is still the same playground.
So you think, so according to you, what would be that invisible barrier? If there's one thing, what would that invisible barrier be?
I think to be able to grow together as a humanity and not discriminate, not judge. Because if you can solve for the child problem, you'll solve for the women's problem. If you solve for the women's problem, you'll solve for the war problem. If you solve for the war problem, you'll solve for, displacement and
it's a domino effect.
It's a full domino. There's a beautiful Ban Ki-moon quote which says, the fight against hunger, the fight against war, the fight for women, the fight for the planet are all the same fight, right? So everybody collectively benefits. But we're so caught in this loop that we're in, that you have to step out of the matrix for you to be able to see the glitch in the matrix. Otherwise, we're playing the matrix over and over again.
True. You are a vocal feminist who famously believes in words matter. So how do we move away from feminism being just a corporate buzzword to being a lived reality without really adopting those masculine traits?
I think a lot of people mistake feminism, and I keep saying this, feminism is for everybody.
True.
Right? The minute you say feminism is not misandry, it's not man-haters as they call it, right? And matriarchy is not the opposite of patriarchy. Matriarchy is very community, it's very, nurturing the village that will nurture the children, that will nurture the nature around you. So that kind of an approach, you'll see it in tribal settlements, how beautifully women and men lead comfortably together. And, it's again based on who's a warrior, there's this beautiful line which says, the goddess of war is Kali and the god of dance is Shiva. We don't know when the two swapped, right? When did men be the warriors and when did women become the dancers? Somewhere that shift happened. And yet, ancestrally, this is what we were raised to believe. Rakta Bija was quelled by Kali, a woman, in deep rage because she felt such deep empathy and compassion. And Shiva was the consciousness that she stepped on, that, put the fire of desire. And if the woman is the creator and the man is the consciousness, then it has to be together. And that's why Ardhanarishwara, that's why if you look at ancient scriptures, we always...
I was going to talk about that.
Yeah, right? So you always looked at blended ways of the masculine and the feminine coming together, not as gender, but as our own internal clock, our own internal voice, which has both the masculine and the feminine. And they become traits then. They don't become gender anymore.
Which are complementing each other rather than competing.
Exactly. Then you'll be more open to trans women. You'll be more open to queer relationships. Because India's always been very progressive about looking at gender as a very fluid thing.
Very true.
And yet here we are today with a very Western idea of what it is. And that somehow has also shaped the way we have grown and have been raised. Like, for instance, the blouses the two of us are wearing are a very Western concept. We never wore blouses, right?
We never wore blouses till the British.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of that colonial hangover, whether it's in our feminism, whether it's in the way we dress, whether it's in the way we behave, that's deeply not internal to India.
True.
It's very colonial.
True.
And for us to understand those nuances and for us to understand how patriarchy, capitalism are all deeply connected to the identity of what feminism looks like. Feminism is actually simply equality. Equal access to education, equal access to pay, equal access to healthcare. At the baseline, that's all feminism is, saying, let's all do this and let's all do this together. We're not saying we want to rule men and sit on these thrones and oppress them. But I think because men's idea of patriarchy is of oppression, they fear that feminism will be where the scales tip and they will be the oppressed. So it's coming from a deeply flawed idea of knowing that their privilege comes from oppression. And whether you see the Epstein files today or whatever is going on around us, it's deeply destabilized access to power that's leading to the world we're in. And feminism, in all honesty, and equitably so, is the answer to change and move towards something that's a lot more progressive, that's a lot more sustainable, that's growth that looks like it belongs to everyone. Where nobody's
not just women. Not just women. All right. So every leader is a product of those who inspired them. So Shreya, who's been your inspiration?
Oh my God, so many. But some of the stories of inspiration have always been these women from small towns who take life into their own hands, who've had really difficult childhoods, bad marriages, but somehow come out, with their own micro businesses. Somebody's doing something, somebody's opening a beauty parlor, somebody's, trying to become a tailor, and sort of they meet their needs, they put their kids through school. And I think so many stories around you can be so deeply inspiring. Yes, there's the Maya Angelos and the bell hooks and the beautiful writers of the world who beautifully give you the landscape of that. And then there are all of the leaders and politicians but I think the biggest hero is the everyday woman who's trying to make her day go by in the most powerful way possible. That's why the sari is so close to our hearts, because it's the story of every woman in India who's probably, that's her only garment that she knows that she wears.
And you're very true about the everyday woman. There are countless women, be it your domestic helper, everybody has their own individual story that inspires us. So you really don't have to be a leader, a very visible person to actually inspire other people. Okay. You've co-authored this book, Words Matter, for girls to own their dignity. According to you, what's been that one very, very significant word that has truly made a difference?
For me, it would be guilt and shame. How men carry guilt or shame with their bodies is very different from the way women do, right? Mother's guilt, the guilt of the wife that is busy, are all not the same on the other side. It's very apparently evident, right? The book is a compilation of 40 words. But I feel like things like guilt and shame are the most powerful ones because we are shamed for our bodies. There's an entire research that's been done. 99% of Indian women haven't even seen themselves naked in the mirror. That's the amount of shame they hold in their bodies, right? So there's so much of an internalization of this shame that rejects us. And it leads to healthcare problems, it leads to mental issues, it leads to emotional issues. There are so many things connected to it.
Lack of confidence.
Yeah, right? Absolutely, right? So I think to me, those are the two words, guilt and shame, that are so deeply different for men and women.
Because to a woman, you may go and say, this doesn't suit you, what you're wearing doesn't suit you. You don't go and tell that to a man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Somehow everything that men wear is like, that's his style. But whereas I remember my daughter saying something, that there's this teacher in her school who was apparently told long ago that when she wore something noodle strap, saying your arms look really fat. And she never wore it after that. And we internalize these narratives, right? And we often think that we should do certain things to fit that frame, to not make anybody upset with us. And in doing so, we erode so much of ourselves, we erase ourselves. in trying to fit in.
True, true. And finally, this is the Naari Shakti show. So here is the signature question. What does Naari Shakti mean to you? And what is one advice that you want to give all women?
I think I'm deeply embodied in and a huge believer of the Shakti of Kali. The god, I mean, it's a spiritual thing, it's not a religious thing. Goddess Kali is an embodiment of feminine rage. And rage is powerful. We've always been told to reject our anger. Whereas anger is one of the most powerful things for you to change something because it's not okay, it's not right. And you can change something only if you have that fuel. If you get upset and sad, a lot of women, when they're angry, they cry because they've been told that their anger is not good enough for the world.
Very true.
That they should mask their anger. So anger comes out as tears. Anger comes out as being upset. Whereas anger
dissipates and goes away. Nothing happens out of it.
Whereas anger, in the Kali's context, is the most powerful thing to destroy Rakta Bija. And if you were to take that equivalent, it's negative thoughts, it's negative energies, it's negativity in the world. And when you're embodied in that rage and when you're embodied in that anger, it's a deeply powerful thing. And when you learn your anger, when you engage with your anger, just like your fear or your desire, when you build a relationship with your anger, it can be a very powerful anchor. How you express it, you can decide and you can modify based on where you are. But people repress anger forever, especially women repress anger forever. And so many autoimmune disorders, so many issues that women have, chronic problems, comes because of this repression of expression. And I think there's so much rage that needs to be, unleashed into the world for us to make it better, that I feel that Naari Shakti is coming face to face without apologizing for that rage, and by looking in the mirror and saying, how do I now make this rage work for me? How do I now make this rage make the world a better place? How do I use this rage that's deeply empathetic and steeped in compassion, my biggest force? And that to me is Naari Shakti. And I think as an advice, the only thing is explore your rage, find out what makes you really angry, build a relationship with anger, because anger is a fuel. It's like having access to this insatiable amount of energy that fuels you to keep going, even when you're at your tired worst.
Very beautifully said. Never thought of anger that way.
Yeah.
Is the bindi inspired by Goddess Kali?
Yeah.
It looks so beautiful on you. I love
Thank
the way you
you.
dress. Let's talk of beauty with a purpose.
Yeah.
So you won that subtitle. What does that really mean? And what change did you bring about? Because you were given that title.
I was already working for years, right, with women, with not-for-profits. I was doing work with Vidya Foundation, with Selco, with Samarthanam, with disability. I was sort of looking at various aspects of life where I could make a small amount of impact, whatever I can do. Now I sit on the advisory boards of 20 organizations. Half of them are not-for-profits, some of them are social impact, some of them are for-profits. I think it was my way of seeing what is it that my voice can do, or how is it that I can support a business or a not-for-profit for them to be able to do what they're doing in a slightly more amplified manner.
True.
Right? Like, for instance, I don't charge women-owned, women-run businesses on my Instagram. Right? I do for sustainable and women-owned, women-run businesses. I do only barter. I'm like, send me what you want, I will highlight it. Also, I know I have the privilege because it's not my bread and butter. I know a lot of content creators can't do that, but I can. And I think it's my way of saying thank you to the journeys of entrepreneurs that really makes a difference in the lives of other people. And all entrepreneurship is beautiful because you're adding to the economy, you're creating jobs. Entrepreneurship in itself is such a powerful thing to have. So I see it as, engaging in different ways of building my purpose, which is to make the world around me a little bit more independent, a little bit more fiery, a little bit more feisty.
Lovely.
And get them to dream dreams that they didn't think was possible.
Thank you, Shreya. It was absolutely wonderful having you here. I feel supercharged. The biggest takeaway from today's episode was, like you said, having a relationship with our anger. So I'm going to use it as a fuel to see what is it that I can change. And I'm sure, all those who watched it today feel supercharged as well. Please do like and subscribe. If you have any comments, suggestions, we are all ears. Please do leave those comments. email us. We'll be happy to get back to you. So until next time, when we have another Nari with her story, hope you all shine bright.